Malachi Flynn with a career-high 27, but it's the Indiana Pacers that take the final game of the season. They'll be ninth and host a play-in game. The Raptors will regroup for next season. 125-113 is your final. Raps record 27-45 in the 72-game season. Hello, everyone, as we welcome you inside Raptors Night Cap, Day Cap today. Randy Urban alongside Sherman Hamilton, Paul Jones, and Jack Armstrong. Sure, Malachi Flynn just missed a three to get him to 30, and that would have been 11 players, but still 10 players with 30-plus points. It's interesting because that stat says two things to me. It says there's talent on this team, and then it says about, talks about the difficulties of this season as well.
Well, there's no question. We can all agree that there's talent on this roster and championship talent to that extent. And, a stat like that tells me something in terms of, guys have their moments throughout even a tough season of being able to put up big numbers. And you look at all those performances and none of them are I'm going for mine performances. They're within the team construct and how the team wants to play. So it's a really rewarding accomplishment, but the losses mounted up. And I just think that when you have that many players that can do that offensively, if the season had a different feel to it or it was in a different space, those accomplishments would have meant more. But I'm sure when you talk to all of these guys, it really doesn't matter because the season didn't go the way they wanted it to. The wins didn't mount up, and those are just numbers that are just going to blow in the wind now.
Mm-hmm. Jack, one of the positive things, though, that I look at these last few weeks is it didn't really matter who was out there. The system was the same, and it seemed like everybody was buying in. Nobody looked out of place, and they're in every game and every play. And that's, a testament to the players and the coaching staff.
Well, I said this during the broadcast. You can tell when a team's coached. You can tell when a team's organized and playing for themselves or playing for each other. And I felt that the Raptors, in spite of the record, you can only control so much because if you're limited in terms of talent level from a personnel perspective, you could be well coached, you could be organized, you could play for each other. But if the other guy's got more talent than you have, sooner or later, it's going to get away from you. And I think a lot of times that was the challenge for the Raptors. But I think from a standpoint of trying to lay the right foundation and get guys to play the way they want them to play, I think they did that. And I think with good health next year, obviously they got to address what that 5 spot's going to look like. What does Gary Trent's free agency look like, in terms of his role? Obviously, the big decision is Kyle Lowry, and then building around the edges in terms of the second unit. So those would be some of the things.
Jonesy, we're going to talk about this in the recap sort of look ahead show later in the week, but just, from your perspective, put into words what this season has been like.
Difficult to be simplistic about it. Nick Nurse described it as tumultuous, fragmented. Just think of what we're doing. We would normally be sitting somewhere in the arena right now doing this.
I'm at the beach.
Well, yeah. Well, we would have kind of a familiarity with our team. Randy, I know you and the guys do some outstanding work with Open Gym. And, we see you on the court before the game. You got your boom mic. You're talking to people. You're establishing relationships. We don't have any of that this year. We don't have any with the team. The team doesn't have any with, the city or the fans. A guy like Malachi Flynn, Jalen Harris, they've never been to Toronto. Nick talked about it. And this was the first indication to me that as much as people said, they'll adjust being in Tampa. Nick said he walked into the arena, Emily, and he wasn't sure which way to go to get to his office. Like those are little things on the human side that you can't quantify that add up. And I heard just through Twitter, Jack, Fred talking in the broadcast about the aches and pains with COVID. Those are all things, Randy, that help part of injuries. They take your team apart. They fracture things. They disrupt your continuity, your flow, your cohesion, your chemistry. And all of those things are part of a winning environment. And the Raptors didn't have all of those this year, let alone the fact that they weren't in their city. So it was a difficult, fragmented, disjointed, incoherent, not very cohesive year. And
Yeah.
hence you get the record that they have, which is the equivalent. Sherman and I figured out, what do we think, Sherman, 30?
Yeah, about that.
30, we figured it out to be a season of 30 and 52 in an 82 game season. This is not a 30-win team if they're healthy and they're at home. So you got to chalk it up to experience. And I would not be surprised to see this team vault right up back into the top 6 next year with some moves, some improvement in the offseason.
Yeah, and sure, Baines with a nice game tonight, 14 and 10. And I think he's one of the players that kind of exemplified, this up and down season. He really lost his confidence, midway through. And it was nice to see him at least bounce back the last couple of games.
Well, it's typical of a Nick Nurse coach team. You're never out of it. You always got a chance. And when you get your chance, take advantage of it. And Aaron Baines had a lot of time to establish himself. And then when we saw Freddie Gillespie and Kem Birch come into the lineup, he was the forgotten man. And, you couldn't argue with Nick Nurse's decision with the production he was getting from the other two guys. But over the last few games, to your point, Randy, he's come out and maybe some of that pressure's taken off of him. And he's kind of said, whatever, I'm just going to let it fly when I catch the ball. And he started to make plays. And I said this on the broadcast on the radio side. If he had been doing this prior to the arrival of Freddie Gillespie and Kem Birch, the Raptors look very different. They might have a few more wins, and maybe the Raptors don't have to go out there and look for replacements to try and fill that spot as aggressively as they did. So, it's a learning lesson for him. It's good that he kept his head in it. And when he got his opportunity, he went back out there and played hard. But at the end of the day, that's what happens. Nick Nurse gives guys chances. Even though they seem like they're out of the mix, he throws them a bone. And if they take advantage of it, he's going to give them more opportunities.
Yeah, Jack, there's going to be a lot of decisions that have to be made. Bembry's one of them, Baines. We're going to get into all that later in the week in this recap sort of look ahead show. But I right now want to touch on what was announced today. Chris Bosh going to go to the Hall of Fame. And I think a lot of people, when they think of Chris Bosh, they don't realize that, just because you're the 4th overall pick, nothing's guaranteed at that point, right? People, I think, forget what kind of work he had to put in. I watched him his first year, his second year, his third year, see him grow. This guy was a workaholic.
He was very dedicated, really professional, good guy, incredibly smart. And someone to me that, you look at, unfortunately, his career got cut short. And thankfully and rightfully, he was selected for the Hall of Fame, because there was no doubt when you watched him play, he was a Hall of Famer. And he's a guy, and who knows, the Raptors have an opportunity to maybe get a top 3 pick. You hope and pray that it's a player of the caliber of Chris Bosh, if a guy like that's available in the draft. So Chris did a great job with the Raptors, and obviously with the Miami Heat. Probably was a better fit as maybe that second guy. Obviously with the Heat, he was like that third guy, where he didn't have to do as much heavy lifting, but he kind of reshaped and reconfigured his game when he went to Miami. And I'm so happy for him. And Chris is obviously a good guy.
Jonesy, how do you characterize his career?
Jack summed it up pretty well. A couple of things really stick with me about Chris. One, in his early time in Toronto with Sam Mitchell as his coach, he had there was a really difficult game, and he was out there, and it was kind of like that pitcher looking to the dugout from the mound, like, I'm done. Can you take me out? And the manager's like, no, I'm saving my bullpen, so you got to keep pitching, even though they're tattooing you. And Chris wanted to come out. It looked like he wanted to come out, and Sam Mitchell was like, no, son, you got to stay in there and take this. This is part of development, and you will learn. And Chris, like, almost being in tears, but it showed him, this is how hard you're going to have to work to get to the level where you're a top-notch player. You want to be good? Okay, this is what it takes. And it's, to Jack's point, people in Toronto are still upset with the way he left. And look, he did it properly. He didn't say anything. He kept his mouth shut. He played hard. He played his contract out. People are saying, well, why didn't you trade him at the deadline? Hey, that year at the deadline in Chris Bosh's last year, the Raptors had, at that time, the best record in franchise history at the All-Star break, and they were headed for the playoffs. So there's no way you're trading me. Don't give me this revisionist history. And you know what, Randy? it doesn't always end the way you want. Not everybody can be like Kobe or play your entire career for one franchise and be glorified. It didn't even happen with Michael Jordan. Kareem got traded. Wilt moved around. Oscar moved around. It's Allen Iverson bounced around at the end. It just doesn't happen like that. So the fans need to back off a little bit too. The guy's a Hall of Famer. We had him in Toronto. Be thankful for his time here. And just remember, that's on his resume, even though he's in the Hall of Fame and people remember him as a champion with Miami.
Yeah, and to that point, you know, when you look at what happened with DeMar DeRozan, when he was traded, there was an uproar. But come June of 2019, nobody was complaining about that trade anymore. Chris Bosh went to Miami. Chris Bosh won championships. So you can't complain about his decision because it resulted in a goal that everybody wants to achieve. And I think for Chris, to Jonesy's point, you know, that moment that he was talking about regarding that time where Sam Mitchell would pull him out the game and Chris Bosh was in tears, that tells me a lot about a player. You know what I mean? And when you come back and you continue to improve and you continue to be that guy, I remember Chris Bosh, as you were talking about Herbs in his first and second year, he looked like a gangly fawn out there sometimes. You know, his body was still developing. He was getting hit around and knocked around and he couldn't stay on his feet a lot. And he just kept on plugging and working at it and never quit. And when you see that type of character, and he's a very smart guy, as Jack alluded to, he's a very intellectual human being. When you see that type come together and build to who they became and what he's accomplished, I'm proud of him. I'm happy for him. And he absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. All right, guys. Great stuff as always. Have to stop you there. Next game for the Raptors, Summer League. You guys going to be at the pool with me?
Well, I just want to get to.
Randall, I'll be in the gym.
You'll be in the gym. All right, fine.
I'll be in the gym. You'll be
Jack and I'll be right there.
Herbs, I'm contractually obligated to be on this show with you, and that's the extent of our interaction.
Sherman, I thought we were more than that, man. I honestly
You thought raw. You wouldn't be the first.
What about all those times we shared in the weight room? Just, you know, you were spotting me, I was spotting you because you needed the help. I didn't.
Okay. You need to end this show because you're straight out lying now.
All right. See you guys. See you next time.
Thanks for watching. You can click to watch our last episode or to subscribe to the Toronto Raptors YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode.